welcome to the channel. In today's editing episode, I'm going to cover editing 2 intentional camera movement images. So many of you have asked for more of these, and I was actually out shooting and did some ICM photography and thought I would take you along for some editing tips and tricks. So the first image we're going to work on is I did a series shooting this gorgeous kind of fern-like flower that had all this white marking on it. And I just thought it was really beautiful how the textures and patterns played out. So we're going to edit that one together. And then I worked on some beautiful yellow flowers that were in a field. And I love the way the intentional camera movement gave it this painted look, but we've got some areas of the image that isn't too appealing. So we're going to work on that using Photoshop. Now for these images where I did these leaves, I also am going to work on this image in Photoshop first. I want to blend these kind of bright spots just a little bit more to give the image a full cohesive look, and then we'll make some final tweaks back in Lightroom. All right, so let's get started. So I have opened up both of these images in Photoshop. Let's start with this image first. So I really loved the detail and the light that was coming through and almost making this look like it was on a scanner or some type of light backlight. It was just kind of an interesting look. There was lots of sunlight coming in. And when I did this with intentional camera movement, it was using a 60mm macro lens. And I was shooting at f/16, I believe. There was a lot of light, and I did not use a filter. And I was just making downward movements to capture these fern-like flowers, plants. All right, so to get started, let's duplicate our background. Now, to work on these bottom areas, there's kind of 2 options that we can do. First would be we could use the clone tool and just kind of come around and clone some of these areas. And I think that is always one of my first options to do because it is relatively easy. The other idea is we could duplicate as we have the background layer. We could transform it and then mask in some more of the plants. That probably will give us an even more natural look. So I think that's what I want to do today. So as soon as my computer decides to work, I will come back and we will work on, here we go, it's up and running again. I think I'm gonna have to do a reboot today, guys. All right, so let's start. We've got this layer, it's been duplicated, and I'm gonna go ahead and reduce the opacity. And what I wanna do is do Command-T to transform. And that's gonna allow me, let's screen this down, to stretch this layer. So I wanna stretch it out. And what I'm trying to do is cover some of those blank spaces. Now I'm going to grab the Move tool and I just want to slide this over so that we get some of that area covered up. So let's go, kind of go in this direction. All right, now I'm going to hit Enter and get that transform there. Now we are going to add our mask. And we want to invert our mask, Command-I, so that we can't see it. Now we need white paint and our brush. And I'm going to start at about 50% opacity here. Let's lower that down just a little bit. And what we want to do is we want to bring in what's underneath. And you can see at a very soft opacity, we can go over it multiple times. We are just kind of blending that big bright spot and getting that removed from the area around our image. So Photoshop is not real happy today. So in just a second, you'll see I'm going to do that again in this area and again over here. And what that's going to do is just give us a little bit of blending. Sometimes when you shoot intentional camera movement, you will have white spots, large gaps maybe in your image where the light is coming through. And so sometimes it helps to just come in and we're just going to blend those areas. So I really like what it did there. Now I think for this area up here, I'm going to try a smaller brush. I raise the opacity. Yeah, I'm going to get more of that green to just soften it. So I like a little bit of what this has done. I'm going to flip it and I want to take it off of my image right there. I'm going to flip it back to white. Just kind of come in and blend. Now I'm going to go ahead and do a stamped layer here. So Command Option. Actually, we don't have to do a stamped layer. Let's just add a transparent layer. And now I'm going to grab the clone tool. And I want to just start, I'm going to click the Option key to select this area. And I think I'll take the opacity to 50%. Let's do that again. Click the Option key. And I'm just going to, add that right there. I think, let's click the Option key again. I'm going to come across with it. And click in here. I'm just extending that texture to just blend that area. So much better. Same thing down here. So often I'll use a couple different techniques, and I like to do a light opacity so that you don't have anything harsh. We want this to look natural. All right, so let's turn these two layers off. You can see the before. I just feel like the eye goes straight to these spots. And after we added our duplicate layer and transformed it and then blended it with a mask, and then our final step, we did a little bit using the clone tool. All right, so now for this image, I'm going to do File, Save. It will take it back into Lightroom, and then we can make our final edits. All right, so before we leave Photoshop, let's work on the second image together. So for this image, we've got these blank spots as well. So I'm going to start by duplicating the layer. And what I want to do next is I'm going to go ahead and start with the clone tool here. And I'm going to get the brush pretty large, take the opacity of the brush all the way up. I'm going to select Option, and I am just going to go ahead and paste in some more of these flowers. I'm just basically extending. Now we could also duplicate the layer and transform and extend our canvas basically, but I think I can do some randomness using the clone tool that's going to make it look a lot more natural. So I want to pop some of that yellow in up there and maybe pop some more right there. And let's see, pop a little bit up there. And then we've got a few bright spots down here. I'm just going to overlay that and probably add a little bit more of the yellow flowers in this direction. What makes it easy is all the movement is in one direction. And so that really helps make it easy to clone and to move things around in our image. All right, so this was the before. We had those blank spots. This is the after. I love it so much better. And now what we're going to do is File, Save, and I'll show you my final tweaks back in Lightroom. All right, so let's come back to Lightroom. And this is the image that we did all our cloning on. So now what I'm going to do is my first step with any intentional camera movement image is to increase the contrast. That is the magic trick. We want to bring out the details, and contrast does that. Look at these gorgeous patterns. So this was before and this is after. Big, big difference. Next thing that I want to do is I'm going to play with the tint slider. I want to get rid of some of that kind of magenta color. Photoshop is trying to load my other image, so we'll give that just a second. We're going to go back to our edited image. And what I want to do is play with the tint here, bring a little bit more green and less magenta. So again, look at before and look at after. I want it to pop that green because it was a green plant and that magenta color was just kind of in the background. Now, something else you can do is sometimes opening up your shadows really helps to add some dimension. So again, before and after, so just opening those up a little bit. You can also come down to your detail and you may want to add a little bit of sharpening if you feel like that helps. And sometimes they go ahead and add a little noise reduction in luminance and color just to smooth everything out. So that was before our edits here in Lightroom and after. All right, so let's go back to our cloned image. So this was our before the cloning, this was after, and now I'm going to make some adjustments right here in Lightroom. So we're going to go ahead and increase the contrast. Ooh, that's a little bright. I'm going to take the highlights down, and I'm also going to work on the temperature. I want to bring that yellow down just a little bit. All right, I like the green. Now, we have a lot of bright white in here. I'm going to try to just lower the whites. We can still maybe pop the brightness, but I just want to remove some of those bright spots a little bit in the image. And then you can play with your saturation of your colors. So we can play with the yellow if we want to tone it down a little bit. We could also tone down the greens if we wanted to reduce those a little bit. These spots have a little bit of blue in them coming from the sky. So we could play with increasing the blue. And it's very subtle, but I think it does help the image overall. Now, the last thing we could do with this image right here is I can go to our effects panel. We could add a vignette. So adding just a little bit of soft white to kind of bring the edges in. And I can also add that denoise feature. And I don't need the tone curve. And we've got our color. I'm not going to do color grading. And under detail, I don't think we need anything else there. So I think pretty much I feel pretty good with this image. Now, a final tweak that I could do is I could take it into a program like Topaz. So let's go to Edit in Topaz Studio 2, and I could add some painting looks if I want to give this even more of a painted image look. One thing that I could do is add some glow to it, which is going to soften it. I could also add an impressionistic look. So what Lightroom will do is prepare the file and it basically creates a new file for you. So we will still have our edited image, but it brings it over here into Topaz for us. Topaz Studio 2 is a fantastic program for creative photography. So I'm going to go to Add Filter. Let's start with Glow. I like to raise the glow all the way up, and then I'm going to lower the opacity. But you can see it just gives a beautiful painted look to this image. It is bringing out more of the lines, and I really think the story is the flower. So I'm going to turn that one off, and I'm going to try a different. Let's try abstraction, and bring that opacity down. And that's another look that we could do. So I'm going to turn that one off, go back to our original image, and now I'm going to go to Add Look. And one that I really love is Van Gogh. It's always a great option. Now you can see what that does to the image. I'm going to take it down to about 50%, and that's giving it just a gorgeous painted look. So we could apply that one. Another one I like is Spring Haze. Now that's going to bring in all kinds of light and different patterns, but that one is also really, really beautiful. So if you like it, you can click Apply. It takes it back to the menu, and then we could try adding that glow back. And that just really, the two combined, I think is very nice. I'm going to just reduce the opacity on the glow, and I think that looks beautiful. It's just a very impressionistic final image. So I'm going to click Accept. It takes the image back into Lightroom, and then we can compare our edits of this image. So that image will be here in just a second. There it is. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. This was the image straight out of camera. The only edit I made was opening up the whites and adding a little contrast. We took the image into Photoshop, where we did some cloning and correcting of the image here. See if we can get that to show up for us. And then we had our final image. And again, I think I'm going to have to do a complete reboot here, you guys. I just, sorry for that in this video today. Having some technical challenges. Let's go to library and see if it cooperates. Okay, so that's our final image with all that gorgeous texture added. And here is our image before we made those changes. And this was our first image. So again, in order, first image, this was with the Photoshop cloning, and this was the final with adding just a little bit of that beautiful soft texture using Topaz Studio 2. So I hope you enjoyed seeing these two edits with the ICM images. Again, this is our before, this was our after. So making small changes with these beautiful intentional camera movement abstract shots can go a really long way. You don't need to do a lot of editing. Just bring out some of the details and tweak your colors and you'll be all set. Thanks so much for watching. I'm going to go reboot my computer, and I hope that you are having success editing and that you get out with your camera. Thanks so much, everybody.